Coming up on today's episode of the Sales Leadership Show, should salespeople, B2B salespeople, be creating content?
If you want to create attraction, you have to create content.
If you're creating content for an organization, you're not going to care as much. You're not going to invest as much into it personally, professionally, and everything else, right?
You know what? If the company had any kind of ethics, they would offer to buy the content.
Sure. Should sales leaders be creating perhaps leadership content? Is this a pyramid that goes to the very top?
They should be creating sales content and leadership content.
Is this the hack, Jeffrey? Because everyone's looking for this hack, this trick.
To me, a hack indicates either somebody who's not that good at it or someone who's looking for a shortcut.
Hello, Sales Nation. I'm Will Barron, your host, and welcome to the Sales Leadership Show. On today's episode, we have the complete and utter legend, the king of selling. We have Jeffrey Gitomer. It was a pleasure, as always, to interview Jeffrey. And on today's episode, Jeffrey answers the question, the most important question post-pandemic in my mind as a sales leader: should salespeople be creating content, and how should leadership curate and leverage that to drive more revenue? Everything that we talk about is available in the show notes to this episode over at salesleadership.org. And with that said, let's jump right into it. Jeffrey, welcome to the Sales Leadership Show.
My pleasure. Nice to see you, Will.
It's nice to see you, Jeffrey. I'm glad to have you on, mate. Okay, so on today's episode, we're going to get into how we can help our sales teams turn virtual connections into paying customers. We're going to dive into your book and a whole lot more, I'm sure, as well. But I just want to frame up the conversation because I think we're on the same wavelength with some of this. So we might have to force some disagreement just to make the conversation interesting for the audience. But this question, before the pandemic, was seemingly controversial. Now I'm not sure it is. Should salespeople, B2B salespeople, be creating content?
Well, if you want to create attraction, you have to create content. Otherwise, you have a brochure that people will find its way to a shredder. So if you're going to be perceived as a salesperson of any kind of value, then I want to know what you think about how I win. Content has to be prepared in a way where the customer feels they win. And if they do, then you win. Now, there is a controversy, and the controversy is in the corporate world, a lot of people believe that if you create content while you're working for the company, that the company owns it. My opinion is, if you want do you want the G-rated version or the X-rated version?
I want the mature, get this banned from iTunes version.
Okay. It's a bunch of bullshit. I don't want, if Mozart writes a symphony and they play it in a corporate music hall, the corporation doesn't own the symphony. Mozart does. So if you're a salesperson or a leader and you write content, that's your content. It doesn't belong to the company. Let them write their own damn content. They have a marketing team of inept people. Let them write something stupid and ridiculous. I've never seen marketing information that I want to keep and put into a book. But a lot of blog posts become books. So I think that you know, and with the pandemic response, it's no longer writing, it's video. Mm-hmm. Where's your daily 2-minute video on, if you're on a sales team and you're selling some kind of industrial product, why aren't you giving me my 1-minute meeting on safety or on productivity or on attendance or something that helps my customer? I just don't understand why people do what they do in the name of sales, when in fact it has nothing to do with sales. It has everything to do with the customer perceiving that they win in order to be purchased.
Is this, Jeffrey, the biggest, and I'm trying not to color the question too much because this is what I believe, right? Yeah. Is this the biggest advantage that salespeople have in the marketplace, in that they can create content, whether it's for an individual or whether it's for a group of individuals that are similar. That salespeople can do this when marketers can't, because we engage with our buyers. We know exactly what they want, when they want it, how we can add value. Marketers typically are making a hypothesis and doing A/B testing and using scientific method to sort some of this out. Is this the biggest advantage that salespeople have?
Right. Salespeople just want to make a sale. They don't want to do a bunch of bullshit in the middle. They want to go to the customer, explain what they have, explain how the customer wins as a result of it, and then the customer decides they're either going to buy it or not. If they don't buy it, it's not the customer's fault. It's the fault of the salesperson. If the sale's not made, it's because the sales guy sucked. I don't know any other way to put it. It's not the price. It's not, maybe it's the reputation. Okay, well then why isn't someone building your reputation online? Whatever the reason is, it's normally a symptom. The problem goes all the way back to somebody that didn't do something properly.
So I'm agreeing with you here that if
thanks.
We're building, as sales leaders, we want to build a team of content creators. We want them to own the content because we want them to have ownership of it. If you're creating content for an organization, you're not going to care as much. You're not going to invest as much into it personally, professionally, and everything else, right?
You know what? If the company had any kind of ethics, they would offer to buy the content.
Sure. Or some kind of licensing, right? In that you create all this while you work with us, we'll pay you this on top of, your commissions.
Exactly. Like to me, when a sales leader hires a new salesperson and says to one of their existing teams, "Hey, can you help train Bobby?" and you don't pay that guy to help train Bobby, you're an idiot. You're an absolute idiot. You train Bobby. Well, I'm busy. No, you're not that busy. You're not busy enough to have somebody leave your sales team for a competitor after you paid all the money to hire them. Well, one of the biggest losses in corporations today is the cost of a lost salesperson. Because you lose their pipeline, you lose their training, you lose their present value of customers. You depending upon where you post, you might lose on Glassdoor or some kind of employee. It's horrible to lose a salesperson. And it's not on a profit and loss statement anywhere. But the manager will blame the sales guy. He wasn't any good. No, you weren't any good. Don't stop blaming people for, when the sales guy wants to quit his job, I say, look, I have an idea. Become the number one salesperson on the team, then quit. Because if you become the number one salesperson, what's your manager going to say? I lost a guy who wasn't any good? No. He's going to have to say, I lost my best guy. Why did that happen? Probably because I suck as a leader. Probably. But they don't want to say that. I want to have the budget to get the training, blah, blah, blah.
So then, what do we need to do, Jeffrey, if we are a sales manager, sales leader, to not necessarily just encourage our team to create content and create content that is effective at getting attention and driving revenue, right? What do we need to do we need to financially incentivize them to do it rather than just a soft, we would like you to do this?
Well, the biggest thing that I would recommend is collaborate in order to do it. So the sales leader says to the sales guy, hey, you need a little more content. Let me help you. Let's go visit a couple of customers and find out why they bought. And then let's make some content around that so that you can become a more effective, a more efficient, a more profitable salesperson. Because if you go to 10 people and write about how they bought or why they bought, I guarantee you the 11th sale will be yours. That I guarantee you. So there can't be a finger pointing thing. There has to be a joint thing. And I feel like there's not enough leaders collaborating with their salespeople to figure it out. And keep in mind, and I think this is important, Will, that if the salesperson feels that he or she is better than the sales manager at selling, they'll never listen to one word the guy says, ever. So I think that it's incumbent upon the sales leader to be the best salesperson on the team. Then the salesperson would be willing to collaborate with them, would be ecstatic about collaborating with them.
Let me ask you this then, Jeffrey. Should sales leaders be creating perhaps leadership content? Is this a pyramid that goes to the very top?
They should be creating sales content and leadership content. He should be creating sales content that he sends out to his people and say, come on, you guys can do better than this.
Sure.
Let's see you make it happen. There's no inclusiveness.
So Jeffrey, then, let's get practical about this, because it's one thing to say it right, and it's another thing to, if we were coaching a sales leader, to get them to implement it in front of their team. Something that I've said, if I could go back in time, I would have done when I worked in medical devices. Well, obviously in hindsight, it's easier to say this. I would have created a podcast. I would have created, say like I had 27 urologists on my territory that I was doing deals with. I would have just interviewed 15 of them on a podcast on a rotation, and the rest of them would have tuned into it. It would have been an absolute no-brainer. And for an hour every week, I would have engaged with these individuals. I'm sure there've been comments and things going back and forth. I wouldn't even have to put it on iTunes. I could have just emailed it out to 27 people once a week. So when we're talking about creating content, Jeffrey.
Wait. What would the subject of the podcast be?
So I was selling endoscopic camera systems, imaging systems to urologists. So
right.
It could be anything. I mean, if we want to dive into this anecdote a bit more,
I would have titled my podcast, "What do you do if you run into a prick?"
I knew there was some Willy joke coming there, Jeffrey.
Yeah, exactly.
But
keep in mind though that humor is what attracts.
Sure.
You can't be British. You have to be Monty Python. And you have to do it you can't be proper. This is not the Queen of England. This is making a sale. And you have to put this in perspective of what is going to make that customer feel attractive enough to me to want to buy from me. Can I engage this person where they will want to connect with me? So
to dive into, just got started down this thread now, but with that urology, we call it the salesperson and the prick or something along those lines. All you have to do is stroke their ego, one person's ego, for half an hour once a week. And you've got this incredibly valuable piece of content that with Yorkshire, it would be incredibly useful for those as individuals within that space as well, right? So how is there a framework that we can roll out for, or what I'm asking you, Jeffrey, is what's the starting point? Should salespeople creating podcasts? Should they be doing YouTube live videos? Should they be blogging? How do we know where we should start with all of this if we're going to encourage our team to create content?
If it were me, I would start a podcast. And every week I would interview one of my customers.
Yeah.
And stroke them about how great they are, how they got started, what they did. And they're going to share it with everybody. And I can promise you that one urologist knows another one.
Of course.
And at the end, I would say, hey, if you're a urologist and you want to be on my show, here's my email. Now I'm going to get new people, new prospects, new customers for free. It just takes a little bit of time. Or I can go on LinkedIn and I can troll for people. I can look for urologists, look at my zip code, look at my thing, and introduce myself and go through a bunch of bullshit. Or I could simply pick one guy who's very well known, do a podcast with him or her, and I win. I win tremendously.
I think a lot of people are nervous about the lag time, right? We get people to start and people assume it's going to be 7 years down the line before they get a lead from this.
I would recommend, we've been doing our podcast called Sell or Die for about 4 years now. We have 2.5 million downloads. So it's not like we don't know what we're doing, but you start to get business pretty much right away. But if you're only doing it to get business, you're doing the wrong thing. You'll have the wrong motive. What you're looking for is content that values other people and builds them up. And it's your reputation. You can actually make a cold call to a urologist and say, hey, you're a very well-known urologist. You may not have seen my podcast, but I specialize in urology. Would you like to be a guest? Not, do you want to hear my sales pitch about my product? Big difference.
Sure. And your personal brand is so strong that you've probably forgotten the days that wasn't a influence within phone calls and sales meetings. But it's something that I experienced perhaps maybe 2-3 years ago. I would start to call people or email people to get sponsors on the show or to sell our corporate training program. And now it's actually quite difficult to do that without at least someone within the chain recognizing who I am. Someone's consumed some of our content at some point. And so when I'm trying to create anecdotes and create blog posts and do experiments, everything's totally skewed. So it's massively beneficial just from a personal branding perspective, right? To, I guess, someone coined this, I don't know who did. It's probably you in one of your books, Jeffrey. So you're building trust at distance, aren't you? And that's like one of the major benefits of all of this.
Right. Exactly. And the challenge that most salespeople, because it doesn't bring an immediate sale, they don't think it has immediate value. When in fact, it has long-term value and short-term response. You'll get response right away if you do it right. Go look at the 5 most popular podcasts. Look at how they elicit response from an audience or bring somebody on as a guest in the audience or answer questions from the audience. And if you're dealing in your specific niche, it's so much easier.
So let's touch on niche here, because I feel like this is something I got wrong with our first podcast, the Salesman podcast. It was just too broad, B2B salespeople. In hindsight, if I were to go back to it again, I would have done it a lot more kind of a narrow focus. For an individual salesperson, should the focus be their ideal customer? Or should we go slightly wider than that as we kind of plan out our initial content?
You can go slightly wider because you don't know. For example, it could be your ideal customer and their vendors.
Sure.
And that way you're more inclusive in who you're trying to broadcast to. But believe me, if you're looking for 25 new customers and there's 100 people that are your targets, shoot there. Rather than try to find out who's in charge of this and make a cold call and try to get an appointment and send literature and they don't show up for the appointment. Come on, those days are over.
Do you think those days are over, Jeffrey, from a perspective of they're just automated now? If you want a brochure, you go online and get it, right? You don't need some schmuck in a suit knocking on your door to hand one over. Do you think those days are over, just full stop?
They may not be full stop, but they're approaching full stop. And COVID has exacerbated that because up until a year ago, video and virtual were an option. Now they're not an option anymore. They're an imperative. And so when you go from one thing to the other that quickly, it changes the whole culture and changes the whole terrain of sales. And salespeople don't realize that the terrain is sales because they're thinking about it from their own perspective and what they used to do. And what they used to do is no longer valid. I mean, you have a nice background. I have a nice background. But have you seen most people's backgrounds when they're on the air? I don't want to see your unmade bed. I don't want to see your closet. I don't want to see the door to your bathroom. I want to see something that tells me you're a professional. That's what I want to see. And most salespeople don't even think about that. And that's part of we're ushering in a whole new era of sales that has time traveled, literally. Because it might have taken 10 years for us to get to the point where we are right now. It just took us 6 months. And if you can't, you're in England, you're basically locked down. How the hell do you make a sales call? And the answer is virtually. Correct?
Correct. Let me ask you this, Jeffrey.
If you go outside, if you're a sales guy, they catch you? The police catch you? What do they do?
Do you know what? We can touch on this for a second because this is interesting. I've had this multiple times on multiple podcasts recently of people outside of the UK, EU, having this weird assumption that people in the UK are like there's coppers, there's bobbies we call them in the UK with hard hats and truncheons running around chasing after people. I'm not sure where this is coming from. It's clearly the media is kind of portraying different pictures in different places.
Really? Are you telling me the media is skewed?
I'm telling you that the media is full of more shit than what people care to admit.
Yeah, exactly. I heard that they actually catch salespeople and recircumcise them. So it makes it much more difficult.
Well, in the UK, you don't need to recircumcise anyone because nobody's circumcised.
I got you. Okay, cool.
And I'm gonna pull him back into the leadership conversation here, Jeffrey, before we go too askew on this. Right, from a sales leader's perspective, right? Everyone's on board. We've listened to this show. We've listened to the king of sales. Everyone's creating content. Some of it is shit. Some of it is great. Perhaps we can communicate within the team. We can improve things over time. We can use a bit of the scientific method to go back and forth and help everyone kind of rising tide raises all ships, that kind of thing. Now, you mentioned backgrounds here. Something as simple as this, right? Should our backgrounds, even when we're on Zoom calls, Skype calls, whatever it is, should we be as leaders, I guess I'm even struggling a way to say this politely, but forcing our team to have our brand in the background and things like that? Or does that just not matter anymore? Have we given up on all of that shit?
I think that branding can help, especially if your brand needs to be better known. I think that's important. But professional is the best way, or inviting would be a best way to make it feel like I'm home. My background is inviting. I'm at the beach. There's palm trees in the background. Don't you want to know where I am and what the temperature is? It's the middle of the winter. And so, but I'm walking on the beach every day, and most people are not. But I want to be able to be myself. I want to be able to be at ease. Don't force me to do things that make me feel uncomfortable and that challenge me not to be myself. Leave me alone. Put me in front of my library, which is, I have two residences, one here at the beach and one in Charlotte, North Carolina. But I broadcast from my library in Charlotte. And it's just, first of all, it makes me look more intelligent. And second of all, it's a very comfortable scene. Art, books, it's relaxing.
Sure.
And I think that the sales leader should not be so demanding, but rather should be encouraging them to do what's comfortable for them, but looks professional. Look professional, act friendly. Look professional, act friendly. Not that hard to do.
Do you think this idea of being professional has changed over the past, clearly it's accelerated, has changed over the past 5-10 years or so? Because I remember, some of your content as well, when I was in sales, I'd Google it and it was very much, and I guess less so you, but some people around that time, that period, it was people in suits and it was whiteboard and it was this and that. And I feel like a lot of sales content now, a lot of content in general, because of YouTubers just blowing up and having way more attention than people who even have massive TV shows, it has kind of, you can be professional in a shirt and a jumper as opposed to a suit. As we're all working from home, do you think the cultural elements of what is professional for sales and what isn't has changed?
I think what you have to do is be aware of the time. What time is it in our lives? Because 10 years ago, a suit might have been the norm.
Sure.
Now the suit is no longer the norm. My statement has always been neckties strangle clear thinking. But that's just me. I believe in going to a sales call and your content is what rules, not your dress. You can't go sloppy. You have to look casual, but smart. So smart casual is the dress of the day. It can be even branded outerwear as the message of the day. But the bottom line is you need to look the part in today's world. Sometimes if you walk in with a suit, it's almost shocking today. Unless you're a banker, in which case you sleep in your suit and all you have to do is get up and steam yourself off a little bit.
Sure. Okay. Well, before we wrap up here, Jeffrey, is there anything, because clearly it's a massive subject, right?
I'm just starting to have fun. Wait, I don't want to wrap up yet. I'm
Well,
having fun here.
I've got a few more questions to ask you at the end of the conversation about the content of Go Live, right? I just want to ask you now before we get into that. Is there anything that we've missed here? Is there any massive pillars of the book, which we'll touch on in a second, that we need to cover, that sales leaders need to know that we haven't touched on?
Yeah. I just want to reiterate a couple of things. Number one, if you want your salespeople to win, you train them yourself. You go with them, you make sales calls with them, you become their mentor, their leader. You earn the position. Don't delegate that. That's number one. Number two, make sure that your salespeople get training that's real world. I don't need to memorize somebody else's system. I don't need to find the pain. I don't need to look at the bullshit of somebody else's idea. I want to go to customers and train there. Train at your customer's place of business. Find out why they bought. Find out how they use. Find out what they do. Find out what they think. Find out what happens when they have a service call. These are the elements that are so overlooked in today's society. They're too structured, bunch of crap about, the 5 points to do this. And no, it's not working anymore. And to me, realistically, you post content that creates attraction, that creates leads. Show me the difference between one person that calls me or you calling 100 people.
Mm-hmm. So
what would you rather do? Have one incoming call or 10 outgoing calls?
Is this the hack, Jeffrey? Because everyone's looking for this hack, this trick, this way of, perhaps 10 years ago, it was like a closing technique. Now it's, as you mentioned then, some kind of secret structure that someone who sells a course has that you can only get access to if you buy into it. Is the real hack just having such a strong personal brand that, for example, Warren Buffett rings either of us up, offers us investing advice, and immediately I'm remortgaging my house to put money into it, right?
Okay, but let me throw this at you, Will, because I think this is very important.
Sure.
To me, a hack indicates either somebody who's not that good at it or someone who's looking for a shortcut.
Yep.
There are no shortcuts in sales. If you want to win in sales, you take the long cut. You invest your time and you do what's necessary so that you can win in the short term, more importantly, in the long term. The hack will never work because it teaches you to cut out some steps. And those are the steps that actually teach you why it happened in the first place. And I'm against hackers of every form, whether it's a computer hacker or whatever. And I'm in favor of building your brand over an extended period of time so that eventually people call you. I don't want to make a sales call. They're a pain in the ass. Well, hi, you don't know me. My name's Jeffrey, but I'm real good at this. I swear to God, my customers love me. And I was wondering if I could just have 5 minutes of your time so I could bore the shit out of you with some slides that my marketing department is making me show. Hello. I recommend to all salespeople, if you have a slideshow, email it the night before. Because anything you're going to tell that person in your slideshow is Googleable. Anything. Who you are, where you came from, what you did, anything. And if you even need to do a little bit of a video voiceover, you can do that too. So that when you arrive at the customer's place, you say, listen, I have a couple of ideas that I want to share with you. And all I'm asking is if you like them, you run with them. Fair enough? Yeah, that's fair enough. It's a pretty novel approach. Why do I need to bore the crap out of somebody? So if you're a sales leader, you have a responsibility to stop boring your salespeople's customers. Stop it.
How long have you had this? I guess it's not an opinion because I agree. It's somewhat fact. This is measurable, right? How long have you thought that, or how long have you believed? Again, I'm using these words that are not quite appropriate. How long have you known that personal brand, creating content, all this side of thing is perhaps depending on how well you are, how good you are at doing it, is as effective, not more effective than just traditional pick up the phone and cold call people? Is this a long-standing opinion?
I'm going to give you the date that it happened for me.
Okay.
March the 23rd, 1992. That's the day that my first column appeared in print in the Charlotte, North Carolina Business Journal. It had my phone number in the bio. And a guy called me up and says, "Do you do business consulting?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And he said, "What kind do you do?" And I said, "Well, I specialize in hands-on, no bullshit." And he said, "Well, how quick can you get here?" And I said, "I can probably be there in about an hour." And I walked out of that call with a check for $1,000. I think that's like 5,000 pounds now. I walked out of there with $1,000 check. I brought it back to the Business Journal, to the publisher, and I said, "You see this? I'm never going to make a sales call again as long as I'm alive, ever." Now, since that time, I've done 2,500 speeches, keynotes, trainings, whatever, not made one sales call. So if you want to talk to me about the value of content and the value of attraction and the value of calling versus dialing, anyone who does it is an idiot. and they hate their job.
Yeah, of course.
But hang on 1 second. Let me say one more thing before somebody jumps all over me. Cold calling is a lousy place to make a sale, but it happens to be a great place to learn how to sell. Because you have about 5 seconds to get through to that person. And then you have to set a meeting. And what do you say when you get to the meeting? Most people, when the guy on the other end of a cold call is agreeable, the sales guy hardly knows what to do. He's used to fighting, or she's used to fighting. So I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying do it until you don't have to do it anymore. Do it till you learn it, and then go into something that creates attraction. So attract, engage, connect. Attract, engage, connect. Those are the three elements that will get a salesperson way past their quota.
So final thing on this then, and this might be a 4-hour conversation in its own right, Jeffrey. Why is it you found this out in 1992 firsthand? I found this out from starting the Salesman podcast and the other show that we do, and within weeks had thousands of downloads just by fluke more than anything else. And very quickly realizing that attention has more value than just me going around to hospitals and speaking to surgeons, has more value to the marketplace. And so there's more opportunity to drive revenue from it, right? Why has it taken, it took me until I was 25 or so to suss that out. You sussed this out. What's that? We're going on 30 years ago. Why is it taking the marketplace so long to catch up?
I'm going to tell you, I can say it in 2 or 3 words. Number 1, stupid leadership. And number 2, pints. People go to a pub at 4 or 5 o'clock at night and say, "Oh, I'll just have a pint or 2. That fucks people up. You can't think clearly at the end of a pint. And your game plan for the next day is a little muddy. And by the time you get home, you have no incentive to plan. You're tired. You're sleepy. You're stupid. You fall over yourself. You drive into a tree. Luckily, they have a great underground system in most of Europe, and especially in England, especially in London, where you can take the tube someplace and get out in 3 stops, and you don't have to worry about driving your car. And now they have Uber, so you don't have to worry about anything. But the bottom line is, you have to stay sober if you want to make money. And the people that are out there partying or watching something stupid on Netflix or whatever, those people lose. They're not serious enough about their business to be able to be innovative. The reason I came up with this, with the concept, was because I was paying attention. That's it. I was paying attention, going to sleep sober, waking up full of full of energy. We have so many diversions right now. You can't walk down the street without looking at your phone. You're walking down the street and your phone goes off in your back pocket and you pull the sucker out to look at it. I see people walking off of planes, Will, and they walk into a wall looking at their phone. And they go, oh, sure, just walked into a wall. And they keep going like nothing bad happened. We are too diverted from our real responsibility. And in this day and age, it's a 3-word: help customers win. Help customers win. Do that. When it's time to buy, they'll buy.
And I guess this is other than it's wider culturally, right, that people waste too much time on the phones. I know for me personally, I don't have the Gmail app on my phone. So to open my actual email, it's a pain in the ass of logging in and all that kind of stuff. I don't have anything on the home screen. I have to talk about what we were talking about before. I have to hack the process of opening something because I'm that dumb that I'll do it subconsciously otherwise. So that's one element, and that's a larger, more difficult thing to solve for the teams underneath the sales leaders who listen to this show. But culturally, within an organization, we've got a lot of opportunity to reprogram our team's brains right, metaphorically and almost physically, the way that our brains work. What is the starting point? And this will lead on to another conversation another time, I'm sure. What is the starting point, Jeffrey, to start to get our teams to focus on helping the customer? Is there any bang for buck, most important thing we should be doing? Is it customer interviews or something like that?
Stop preaching and start talking. Have a dialogue rather than a monologue. If I led a sales team, I would have the meeting start out by saying, okay, guys, tell me what's up. Each individual person, tell me what's up. What are you doing? What did you do that was great yesterday? What was the best thing you did yesterday? How did you make a deal yesterday? And I do these seminars, and before I do the seminar, they're all customized. I have to talk to leadership and salespeople so I know how to customize my information. You go to a doctor's office and he doesn't say, looks like your leg's hurting you, Will. No, it's my arm. I was going to say that next. No, they say, where does it hurt? They ask the question. And the sales leader has to be more collaborative by asking, has to be more dialogue by asking, hey, how'd it go yesterday? What was your biggest obstacle? Oh, wow, that's my favorite objection. Let me share with you how I do it. It's up to the leader.
And one final question, Jeffrey, it's going to ask everyone that comes on the show, if you could offer, and it might be the same advice, if you could offer one piece of advice to a sales leader who's 30, 60, 90 days into their role, they're brand new, they've just come up from a sales individual contributor role, what would that one piece of advice be?
If you don't love the product, the company, and the people that you're working for, get out. Because you're not gonna be happy. You're going to be angry. You're going to be dictatorial. You're going to think of your position as somewhat powerful, and you're going to fail at it. The object of any leadership position is to be followed in a way that people respect you, agree with you, like you, and are willing to take your teachings out and turn them into money.
I love it. That's powerful stuff. That word, Jeffrey, follow. I think that sums up a lot of what we talked about today, right?
Yeah, totally. Follow me, guys. No, I really don't want to.
Well, look, Jeffrey, with that, mate, for everyone who does want to follow you, tell us about the new book, Go Live, where we can find it. And I think it's out on Kindle, but it's coming out on hardback shortly, right?
Yeah. It's out in the US already. You can probably go to Amazon. It's called Go Live. It's all about, and the subtitle of the book tells you everything. Turn virtual connections into paying customers. And if you don't have virtual connections, something's drastically wrong with who you are as a salesperson at this moment. Because virtual is not the new black. It's the new green, money. And the people that are mastering it right now are the ones that are going to win long term. It's new for most people. It's a year old. Some people didn't even know what Zoom or Skype was a year ago. And now they use it every day. You're familiar with Zoom, right?
Yep.
Will? It's like Skype, except it works. And anybody can get on any. Microsoft has a platform. Everybody has a platform now. Google has a platform. Microsoft. If you want to know if video works, go look at YouTube. Go look at Facebook Live, and try your best to understand how you might be able to do something that takes advantage of this. Because there's three kinds of people are going to emerge from the pandemic: winners, watchers, and whiners. I want to be a winner. And if you want to be a winner, then virtual and video are the new points of mastery in sales. Can you imagine, you live in Leeds, but you have a sales call in Edinburgh. So you're going to fly to Edinburgh. You're going to meet somebody for an hour and a half. You're going to have maybe go to the Masters or St. Andrews or something, or go to a museum. Then you're going to get back on a plane and go home. Why wouldn't you send that customer a pound of coffee or K-Cups and a mug and say, hey, let's meet online for our first meeting and see what our compatibility factor is. And then if you need me to fly to Edinburgh, I'll gladly do it, but maybe you should fly to Leeds. And maybe corporate travel is going to be cut by at least 50%, maybe more.
Way more. It's got to be more.
Yeah. So that part, and the airlines are already shaking in their boots about that. But how are you taking advantage of this? The same guy I wanted to talk to at 10 o'clock in the morning in Edinburgh, I can meet with somebody at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock online and be in my pajama bottoms. You have to have a good top, because I can't tell if you're wearing pants or not.
Well, I won't stand up, Jeffrey, for want of embarrassing the both of us.
Wait, I apologize. Trousers. I don't want to.
No, so here's one for you. People in the north of the UK call pants. I don't know why. It's an Americanism, right? But yeah, we people in the south call them trousers. Yeah.
Well, Mick Jagger must be from the south, because when he did that live thing, he said, you wouldn't want my trousers to fall off. And to me, England, they're not pants, they're trousers. I don't care where you live. You guys have words for things that are just wonderful.
Well, don't forget, it's called English, Jeffrey. We did invent it.
Oh, that's a revelation. It is called English. So I just want to challenge a salesperson. You don't need anybody's permission to make a virtual sales call. You don't need anybody's permission to go to a video source, and there's several of them now. The one I use is Hippo Video. You can put it in the notes if you want to. Use hippovideo.com, and that'll take you to a free 7-day trial. And you make a video instead of sending an email. It immediately separates you. Immediately. Wouldn't it be cool if you sent a proposal to somebody and put a video with it? Instead of well, thanks very much for this opportunity. And again, thanks. Enclosed is your proposal. Please turn to the price page and not read anything else like everyone else does. Come on. It's unbelievable how salespeople will not take advantage of technology for their own benefit.
And I'll wrap things up with this, Jeffrey, in that I'm sure you agree, there's a real first mover advantage to a lot of this. Whether it's a new platform, whether it was LinkedIn have kind of calmed down on it now, or whether it was long text posts on LinkedIn up to a couple of years or a couple of months ago, we're getting tons of attention and traffic. And the first few people to kind of put the nuts on the line and to do it have now built massive audiences, have done really well. Video is going to be the same. If you put yourself forward, if you're willing to get out of your comfort zone and just get it done, you're going to have that first mover advantage, and that will then stick with you throughout the rest of your career.
and you just practice it. If you don't think you're that good at it, just do it. The cool part about Hippo Video is you get to look at your own video. And you can literally coach yourself, Will. The best coach is you, of you. You look at your podcast, you look at your lives, whatever you do, you see yourself and you go, shit, I can't do that. I got to sit up straighter. I have to need a better background. Something has to change. Well, with Hippo, you get to see what your message is, not just hear it. And you can correct yourself in a heartbeat for the next one, and then get better, get better, get better. And eventually people go, wow, this guy's really good. That's where you want to be, really good.
For sure. Well, I will actually link to, now that you've mentioned it, I'll link to a couple of our first videos that are still on YouTube that have had thousands of views, but they are embarrassing. It's cringy to go back and watch them, but just, I'm not saying I'm incredible right now, far from it, but to look from that to where we are now in just a few years, that is just repetition, just doing it over again. It's watching the videos back. It's feeling like an idiot for saying the wrong thing at the wrong time, stammering, stuttering, and all kinds. And I think that's a humbling experience for everyone. And with that, Jeffrey, I will have to wrap up now, mate. I'll have you back on to talk about this in the future. The cameras, I turn into a pumpkin on the hour, mate, because all the memory cards all wrap up. So we will have to finish it. And with that, I want to thank you for joining us again on the Sales Leadership Show.
It's my pleasure, Will. It's my total pleasure. Be healthy, stay healthy, and good New Year.